Hello, you are welcome to the digestive system. Now, how do you know your digestive system is working? You know your digestive system is working because you feel hungry. How do you know your digestive system is not working? You know that because you can have diarrhea. That means your digestive system is not working. Or when you get constipation, it means your digestive system is not working. So we are going to describe the processes involved in the digestion of food. When you are hungry, you have to eat so that the food will take time to break down. And we are going to look at the healthy digestive system, and we will look at the pathological cases in the digestive system. So, keywords, we have got nutrients. Nutrients are chemicals that are locked up in food. They are locked up in food. And then gastrin is a hormone that is produced by the stomach. Then we have cholecystokinin, is a hormone produced by the gallbladder. Secretin is a hormone produced by the pancreas, and they all work to bring about the digestion of food. The digestive system is based on how food is organized. How food is organized. Every living thing needs food to survive, and all the foods we eat contain nutrients. And the nutrients are substances that provide the energy and the materials needed for growth, for repair, regulation, and maintenance of the cells in our bodies. Therefore, food is what the organism must consume, and nutrients are substances within the food that is needed by the cells to sustain and maintain life. Here up on the board, you would see the food pyramid. The food pyramid has got carbohydrates, bread, pasta, rice, banku, yam at the bottom of the pyramid, followed by vegetables, fruits, pineapple, orange, apple, banana, tomatoes. They are the next that we need most. And then we have the proteins, milk, cheese, meat, sausage, chicken, and so on. And then the least that we need, we are talking about oil. We don't need too much oil in our food. We don't need too much salt in our food. Salt, we need very tiny amounts of it. But we need generous amounts of carbohydrates. We need generous amounts of fruits and vegetables, and some relative amount of proteins, eggs, meat, mushrooms, beans. They are all coming from that. So we have the 6 essential nutrients. The 6 essential nutrients. Carbohydrate is one. The source of carbohydrate is mainly from plants, and their function is to give us the source of energy that our body requires for its daily-to-day activities. And sugars are examples of carbohydrates. Chocolate bars, they are examples of carbohydrate. Fruits and vegetables are also examples of carbohydrates. The next one is lipids or fats. The sources of lipids are plants or animals. Plants or animals. And if there is too much of it, it is converted into carbohydrates within the body. Functions of lipids is to store energy. It acts as component of cell membranes. It cushions delicate organs. It is the carrier of certain vitamins and raw materials for important chemical reactions. The next one is proteins. The source of protein: meat, fish, eggs, milk, cheese, legumes, and whole grain. And the functions of protein, when it is broken down, it becomes amino acids, which are used in the construction of human proteins. Proteins, we have essential proteins, we have non-essential proteins. The essential proteins are the proteins that our bodies cannot do without. Our bodies can't do without the essential proteins. The non-essential proteins are the ones that the body itself can manufacture. And proteins are found in enzymes, in blood, in skin, in hairs, muscles, and antibodies, and so on and so forth. Vitamins are various foods that contain different types of the vitamin. You have vitamin A, B, C, D, E, vitamin K. But the functions of vitamins are required in tiny amounts. You don't need too much of it. Okay? And it helps some of the enzymes to perform their functions. Some of the vitamins are fat soluble, like vitamin A, D, E, and K. And the other two, vitamin B and C, they are water soluble. Minerals, we have the various foods that we eat. They contain mineral salts. Example, milk contains calcium. Salt contains sodium. Cereals contain iron. And bananas contain potassium. Functions of minerals are used throughout the body for many, many functions. Calcium for strong teeth, for strong bones. Iron for hemoglobin. Sodium and potassium are used in the nervous system. The last one is water. Water is not a nutrient, but it is needed to help with the chemical reactions that occur in our bodies. In a day, each healthy person needs 3 liters of water. And water is a universal solvent. Water is required for most of the activities. But carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins, they are required to be digested. They require digestion. But water, mineral salts, and vitamins, they do not require digestion. In other words, they are not broken down. They are absorbed just as they are. The human digestive system takes in food, which is complex organic compound, and it breaks it down or digests it in order to release nutrient that is contained inside the food. Digestion will break down large molecules of organic compounds into smaller and simpler units that can be absorbed and used by the cells of the organism. 2 types of digestion: mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. Mechanical digestion is the physical breaking up of food into smaller pieces by the teeth. The tongue manipulates the food into a mass called a bolus. The squishing action of the esophagus, the intestines, further break down the mass of the food. It further breaks down the mass of the food, and the churning action of the stomach muscles mix the food. It helps to mix the food with the digestive juices. Now, this is the general plan of the human digestive system. So we have the mouth. The food enters through the mouth. The food is chewed or masticated, and then it is swallowed. It goes down the esophagus, and then it enters the stomach. The stomach can store food for 2 to 6 hours, depending on the type of food. If the food is mainly carbohydrates, it passes out with no time at all. If the food is rich in fats and oils, it can stay in the stomach for up to 6 hours. And from the stomach, the food enters the duodenum in bits. It enters the duodenum in bits. And then from the duodenum, it moves into the small intestines. The small intestines is very, very long. Very, very long. In fact, the whole digestive system is about 6 meters long. And it looks like a little more than the flyover. When you get to the Malam Junction, you look at the Walker-Bush flyover. That is how long the digestive system is. And it continues from the small intestines into the large intestines, and it moves all the way from the large intestines into the rectum. That is after the food is absorbed. Most of the absorption occurs in the jejunum of the small intestines. The unabsorbed food is the one that passes into the large intestines, and then it is removed through the anal passage. Now, inside the mouth, we have the tongue, which rolls the food around the mouth and then into a bolus till it is swallowed. To help the tongue to do its work, we have the salivary glands. We have 3 pairs of salivary glands. The parotid salivary gland, which is in the cheek, the sublingual salivary gland, which is below the tongue, and then the submandibular salivary gland, which is below the lower jaw. And we have the pancreas. We have the pancreas. We have the liver, and the salivary glands acting as the accessory glands. In other words, if they are not there, digestion will still take place. But they are there to help with digestion. All right, can we move on from the diagram? The next one is to look at the alimentary canal, or the gastrointestinal tract. It starts from the mouth, and then it continues all the way to the anus. It is very, very long. In fact, much, much longer than the organism itself. And it is folded several times and pushed into the abdominal cavity. There are enzymes that are actively involved in chemical digestion. Enzymes that are actively involved in chemical digestion. And the enzymes we are looking at here, we have amylase. Amylase is found to be produced by the salivary glands. And amylase works on starch and glycogen. It digests starch into disaccharides. The stomach produces the enzyme called pepsin. The stomach produces the enzyme called pepsin. And pepsin works on proteins and break them down into short-chain polypeptides. Then the small intestines produce peptidases. They produce peptidases that work on the short-chain polypeptides, digest them into amino acids. The pancreas produces its juices containing lactase, maltase, sucrase, and pancreatic amylase, together with trypsin, chymotrypsin, and carboxypeptidase plus lipase. And they all work on the food that was not able to digest up until the time that it gets into the small intestines. So this is the table that we are going to use all through the chemical digestion, the digestion by enzymes. Now, if you look at the table carefully, you realize that the first to start digesting as the food enters the mouth is polysaccharides or starch and starch products. And the enzyme that works on it is amylase. And nothing else is digested here in the mouth. Protein digestion does not start. Nucleic acid digestion does not start. Fat digestion does not. It's only carbohydrate that starts digesting in the mouth with the help of the salivary amylase. Then the stomach, when we swallow the food moves from the mouth, passes through the esophagus, and then enters the stomach. Now, when it gets into the stomach, digestion of carbohydrates stops, and the digestion of proteins begin. The enzyme called pepsin is what starts the digestion of protein in the stomach. And it breaks down proteins into small chain polypeptides. Then from the stomach, food is sent into the duodenum, small bits of it at a time. Remember, the food is stored in the stomach for as long as up to 6 hours. So during that time, only a little bit of the food is sent into the duodenum at a time. And pancreatic juices that contain the pancreatic enzymes digest it. So the polypeptides are digested. The DNA is digested. The polysaccharides or disaccharides are also digested. Fats are also digested. Then from the duodenum, the food moves into the jejunum. And there we have the small intestines lined with villi. And the villi are like finger-like projections. And what they do is that they have brush borders or microvilli on their surfaces. And they digest food materials or food substances that could not digest in the duodenum. They digest it into the final absorbable products so that starches, glycogen, polysaccharides finally break down to give monosaccharides. Proteins finally will give amino acids. Nucleic acids will give nitrogenous bases, sugars, and phosphates. And fatty acids or fats, lipids, they will break down to give fatty acids and glycerol. From the small intestines, absorption of these food products occur, and then it moves from there into the large intestines. And the large intestines are a place where bacteria are located. And if the food was not able to digest, they also work on the food. And as they work on the food, they produce vitamin K and some of the vitamin B complexes so that the body can use it. They are there as bacteria, but they don't harm the body. They are there, they work without harming the body. Right. Let's take a look at this graph. The graph is looking at the weight and the amount of protein, food nutrients that the body has. So when you take the human body, the highest nutrient that the human body has are proteins, followed by lipids, followed by mineral salts and nucleic acid. The one that occurs in the least are carbohydrates. The one that occurs in the least are carbohydrates. And carbohydrates must be taken in every time because it's the body's number one preference for energy production. Energy production. Right, so this is talking about the digestion of disaccharides into monosaccharides. So if you take maltose, it is digested into 2 units of glucose. If you take short-chain polypeptide, it is digested into amino acids. Fatty or lipids are digested into fatty acids and glycerol. Right. So back to our table. Digestion, chemical digestion occurs in the mouth. And here we can see the amylase, which is the enzyme that digests the polysaccharides into disaccharides. Now, in the mouth, we have the 3 pairs of salivary glands, the sublingual, submandibular, and then the parotid glands. They all release their juices into the mouth. And salivary is mostly water and some enzymes, but the main enzyme is the amylase. And we also have lysozyme. Lysozyme deal with germs that try to enter the mouth with the food that we eat. They destroy it. And saliva also contains mucus. Saliva also contains mucus. In the mouth, we have the teeth. As human beings, we have the teeth. And the teeth is able to crush the food that we eat. When we bite the food, the teeth has to grind the food into form that is able to be swallowed. Then the tongue that is there has got different taste buds. The tongue has different taste buds. We have the sweet at the tip, and then we have bitter at the back, and then sour at the sides. Now, if we take a tooth is actually a very specialized bone that is used for cutting food, and the teeth is very much alive because it has nerves and it has blood vessels supplying it. The tooth is buried in the gums, and the part that is exposed is called the crown. The crown is made up of enamel, and there is a soft part of the tooth called dentine. As human beings, we have 32 sets of teeth as adults and 28 sets as babies or children. And each of the tooth has got a function to play. And around the teeth, we have the lips that act as a border. It opens and then it closes. At the front of just behind the incisors, which is the 2 front teeth, we have the hard palate. The hard palate is very hard, but behind the hard palate, we have the soft part called the soft palate, and then we have the uvula. The uvula. What the uvula does is that it moves to close the nasal cavity during swallowing. And we have the tonsils at the back. The tonsils, the palatine tonsils, and the palatine tonsils also deal with pathogens that try to enter the mouth. Swallowing is not a thought action. Swallowing, once the food is chewed and you want to swallow, once the food gets into the esophagus, that's it. Everything is done by involuntary action. Involuntary action. The food moves down slowly by peristaltic motion. Peristaltic motion. And then gradually the food enters the stomach. Gradually the food enters the stomach. So no food falls directly from the mouth, from the throat, and then bam, into the stomach. No. They move slowly by peristalsis. And so in the stomach, what happens there is the digestion of proteins, the food that we eat. If it is a balanced diet, then you have proteins that are being digested in the stomach. The stomach is a muscular bag. The stomach is a muscular bag that churns and mixes food. And as food enters the stomach opens to accommodate the food. There are some people, when they eat, you don't see any evidence of their stomach showing. But some people also, the smallest food they eat, their stomach shows that they have eaten something. Now, the stomach is made up of 4 layers. The stomach is made up of 4 layers. We have an innermost layer called the mucous layer or the mucosa. The mucosa. And the mucosa has the gastric gland. The gastric gland has got the production of gastric juices when there is food in the stomach. When there is food in the stomach. And we have the mucus secreting cells as part of the mucosa, and the hydrochloric acid secreting cell as part of the mucosa, and the pepsinogen secreting cell and the gastrin secreting cell. Then the gastric glands, the parietal cells produce hydrochloric acid, and the hydrochloric acid kills pathogens that try to enter the food while swallowing. And the goblet cells in the mucosa produce mucus. The chief cells produce pepsinogen. But when pepsinogen is produced, it is converted by hydrochloric acid into pepsin so that it will start digesting. Now, when there is no food in the stomach, the pepsinogen will not be able to be converted into pepsin. Once there is food in the stomach, pepsinogen is converted with the help of hydrochloric acid into pepsin. Now, if there is a mistake and then the stomach that has no food in it and it starts producing pepsin or hydrochloric acid and pepsinogen to produce pepsin, then the stomach will start digesting itself. When the stomach starts digesting itself, it leads to a condition known as ulcers. It leads to a condition known as ulcers. We also have gastrin, which is a hormone secreted by the stomach, and it controls the juices that are produced. So between 2 to 6 hours, the food that has entered the stomach comes out like chyme. And chyme is similar to milkshake. It has a milkshake appearance that now enters the duodenum. Now, from the mucosa, we have the next layer called the submucosa. They are below the mucosa, and they contain nerves, they contain blood vessels, they contain lymphatic nodes, and so on and so forth. Then, behind the submucosa, we have the muscle layer, also called muscularis. The muscle layer is made up of 3 different kinds of muscles: the longitudinal muscles, the circular muscles, and then the oblique muscles. From the submucosa, we have the outermost layer called the serous layer, also known as the serosa, the serosa, the serosa. So, that is the stomach. Storage and continuation of chemical digestion. The storage and continuation of chemical digestion. So here, we are looking at the lumen of the stomach. The lumen of the stomach. And it is pinkish in color. Pinkish in color, and it is able to send food without any rubbing of the inner surface, because it's made up of mucus producing cells that makes the inner lining smooth and less exposed to friction. Now, the next thing we are going to look at is the liver. The liver. The liver is the largest internal organ. The largest internal organ. It cuts across all the way, and it is very, very important. You cannot do without the liver. You cannot do without the liver. It does so many things for the body. It produces about 500 different chemicals. It secretes bile. It stores the bile in the gallbladder. The bile is made up of salts and bile pigments. It emulsifies fats. And the gallbladder is closely attached to the liver and is able to store, concentrate, and release bile into the duodenum. And the gallbladder has got two ducts. The cystic duct, that is the one coming from the gallbladder, and the hepatic duct coming from the liver itself. And when the two of them meet, they form the common bile duct. They form the common bile duct. Bile production is stimulated by the hormone known as cholecystokinin. Cholecystokinin. From the liver, we are looking at the pancreas. The pancreas has got two functions. As an exocrine function, it produces digestive juices like pancreatic amylase and others. As an endocrine gland, it produces glucagon, somatostatin, and insulin. So that is the pancreas. That is the pancreas. It buries its head in the duodenum, and its secretions also is released into the duodenum. So these are the juices that the pancreas secretes: amylase, lipase, trypsin, chymotrypsin, carboxypeptidase, nucleases, and sodium bicarbonate. Secretin and cholecystokinin help the pancreatic juices to be produced when the pancreas is stimulated. When the pancreas is stimulated. So, what is in the stomach is acidic. The food in the mouth is alkaline. But once the food enters the stomach, the environment is acidic, so it stops the process of starch digestion. Then the food from the stomach, when it enters the duodenum, the pancreas and its juices make the food alkaline. It makes the food alkaline, and so that the pancreatic juices can do their work. The pancreatic juices can do their work. So in the duodenum, all the food that was not digested in the mouth and in the stomach, they have a chance of now being digested. All the food that was not digested in the mouth, in the stomach, they have a chance now of being digested. So the inactive trypsinogen, inactive procarboxypeptidase, inactive chymotrypsinogen if there is food in the duodenum, then they become activated and they become trypsin, carboxypeptidase, and chymotrypsin. Otherwise, the pancreas will start digesting itself. So here we have the next on the table, the lumen of the small intestines, where the food that was not able to digest in the stomach, in the mouth, they now have the chance of being digested, so that the maltose and other disaccharides are broken down into monosaccharides like glucose. Polypeptides are also broken down into amino acids. DNA, RNA are also broken down into nitrogenous bases, sugars, and phosphates. And fat globules are broken down with the help of bile salts into glycerol, fatty acids, and glycerides. The small intestines, as I said earlier, is many times longer than the animal, and it's about 6 meters, the small intestines alone. So if you look at Malam Junction and you look at the Walker Bush, from the street to the top of the Walker Bush is about 5 meters. So you can imagine, and it is folded and pushed into the abdomen. So the small intestines is made up of the duodenum, which is the part immediately after the stomach. And from the duodenum, we have the jejunum. From the jejunum, we have the ileum. And then from the ileum, we have the cecum, which is like a pouch. And then the ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, and then the anus. Now, this is known as the mesentery. Mesentery is the part between the intestines that stabilize the coils of the intestines, so that the intestines don't twist, but they are maintained with the help of the mesentery. And then there is a curtain-like material that is always in front of the intestines. We call it the greater omentum. It prevents peritoneal transfer of bacteria and other pathogens, so that it protects the abdominal cavity. So the small intestines completes digestion of nutrients in the chyme. The duodenum is about 25 centimeters. That is where all the rest of the digestion occurs. The jejunum is up to about 2 meters, and the ileum is also about 2 meters. The lumen of the small intestines is made up of villi. They are finger-like projections. And on their surface, the free surface, you have the microvilli. And it is richly supplied with blood vessels. The villi is richly supplied with blood vessels so that it will help with absorption of food. Now, within the villus, we have the lacteals. The lacteals is for absorption of fats and fat products. So the vitamins A, D, E, and K, which are fat soluble, are absorbed into the lacteals. And then the fatty acids and glycerols, they are also absorbed into the lacteals of the villus. The carbohydrates, which is digested into glucose, fructose, and galactose, they are absorbed into the blood. Amino acids are also absorbed into the blood. Mineral salts are absorbed into the blood. And vitamins and water are also absorbed into the blood. Now, this is the main organ of digestion and absorption. The liver producing bile for storage when there is no food in the stomach and the duodenum. Then when there is food, hormone cholecystokinin works on the gallbladder to release its content into the duodenum. Then we have the stomach also bringing its acidic chyme into the duodenum. The pancreas also brings its juices, pancreatic trypsin, into the duodenum. So the duodenum is where all the food that was not digested has a chance of being digested. Now let's look at digestion of lipids. Digestion of lipids. In the digestion of lipids, fat is a globule. It's a big molecule and it's very difficult for enzymes to digest it. So what the fat, how the fat is able to digest as a result of the bile salts, they just surround the tiny globules, the tiny bits of it, so that they don't come back together to form a large globule. They don't come back together to form a large globule. And so that the fat is also digested. Nucleic acid is also digested in the duodenum. And then the absorption, this is the lacteal that we were talking about. This is the lacteal, okay? And these are the blood vessels. So the blood vessels will absorb the glucose and the amino acids, and then the lacteals will absorb the fats and the fatty vitamins. So let's look at it again. The glucose and galactose and fructose, they are coming from carbohydrate digestion, and they are sent into the blood by active transport. Active transport. Active transport means that no matter the concentration of the glucose in the blood, energy is used to pump more glucose into the blood, and that is active transport. Facilitated diffusion occurs for fructose or fructose, coming from fruit sugar, and that one is a channel is created for it to be absorbed into the blood. Then we have amino acids that is absorbed by active transport into the blood. Dipeptides and tripeptides, they have to be broken down by the epithelium on the brush borders. They break it down so that they become amino acids and then they enter the blood. Fatty acids, fat-soluble vitamins, they are absorbed into the lacteal and they enter the lacteal as fatty acids and glycerol, but then they become converted into chylomicrons and then they get in, right? So the last bit of the table is showing the large intestines, where resident bacteria work on food that was not able to digest. They work on it, like the protein. If you eat too much protein, the resident bacteria will work on it. And sometimes they produce a lot of gases, and that is what causes flatulence in a person. In the large intestines, absorption and elimination occurs. The large intestines has got absorption and elimination. And the areas of the large intestines, we are looking at the cecum, which is a pouch that is being shown around here, and then the ascending colon, the transverse colon, the descending colon, the sigmoid colon, and then the rectum before the anal canal, the large intestines. Now, the main function of the large intestines is to absorb water and electrolytes. Now, if you've had constipation before, or you've had diarrhea before, in between, you see what we are talking about. Constipation is the inability to regularly ease the bowel, and diarrhea is runny, watery stools. When somebody has serious diarrhea, we are talking about 8 times of visiting the toilet in an hour. 8 times in an hour. When we talk of constipation, we are talking about going to the toilet once a week, and that with a lot of difficulty. A lot of difficulty. So the large intestines concentrate and eliminate solid waste. And the large intestine is the home for bacteria, folic acid, vitamin K, and several vitamin Bs. And then their action produces gases, especially if the food is protein rich. So you eat a lot of beans, you have that problem. You eat a lot of pancakes, you have that problem. You drink a lot of milk, you have that problem, and so on and so forth. Hormones that coordinate the secretion of digestive juices in the alimentary canal. We are looking at the stomach producing gastrin. The stomach produces gastrin, and the gastrin causes the secretion of the gastric juices into the stomach once there is food in the stomach. Once there is food in the stomach. We have intestinal gastrin. We have secretin. Secretin works on the pancreas and the liver, and they are secreted by the pancreatic juices. Secreted by the pancreatic juices. And cholecystokinin. Cholecystokinin is what causes the pancreas and the gallbladder to secrete the juices coming from the gallbladder and also the pancreatic juices. Enterocrinin. Enterocrinin is an inhibitor. It's an inhibitor. It stops secretion of intestinal juices. And enterogastrone also has inhibitory function. It inhibits the secretion of gastric juices and decreases gastric motility. So, the hormones that coordinate digestive juices. We are looking at this picture. If you see a ripe fruit, your eye sees it, messages are sent to your brain, you go get the food, you start eating, and that is how the food passes into the stomach and then to all the other parts, and then finally it gets out of the body. So, looking at this diagram, wherever you see a plus, a green and a plus, it means that there is secretion. Wherever you see a red minus, it means there is inhibition. So gastrin is secreted, secretin is secreted, cholecystokinin is secreted, but enterogastrone is trying to suppress their secretions. Right. Now that we have finished talking about the digestive system, let's look at some of the digestive disorders. One, we are looking at ulcers. Ulcers. Ulcers are sores in the digestive tract. We have stomach ulcer, we have duodenal ulcer. And since the stomach is very acidic, the stomach is supposed to be protected from this acidic substance. And pyloric glands secrete a thick layer of mucus that coats and protects the lining of the stomach from digesting itself. Ulcers form when the mucus layer begins to erode, leaving the stomach lining unprotected. And it can be caused by severe hunger. It can be caused by bacteria. It can be caused by stress, especially when the person consumes lots of alcohol and smokes a lot. Sometimes they forget to eat and they develop the ulcer. We have gallstones. Gallstones are small, hard masses that form in the gallbladder and caused by the formation of crystals in the bile. Contributing factor of gallstones, we are looking at smoking, excessive alcohol use, obesity, or you can have a hereditary predisposition. Treatment of these gallstones, this is the gallstones, the stones that gather in the gallbladder. So treatment can be ultrasound waves to break up the stones so that they can pass out in the urine, or they can be surgically removed. They can be surgically removed. We have the Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease, that is the inflammation of the ileum lining, also known as ileitis, causes pain and diarrhea, fever and rectal bleeding, decreased appetite and weight loss. Difficult to diagnose since symptoms are similar to other disorders like irritable bowel syndrome. Colitis is another disease. It leads to ulcerations or sores and inflammation in the colon. Symptoms include loose, bloody stools and cramps. May have skin lesions and joint pains. If medications do not work, the person may have the entire bowel removed, and the rectum can also be removed with an external opening for waste removal. Good nutrition is important for the following reasons. 1, it provides energy to our bodies for metabolic activities to take place. It provides essential raw materials that our bodies need as building blocks, but are unable to manufacture on their own. Maintaining a healthy lifestyle means eating good, nutritious food. Follow Canada's food guide, and it can help you to ensure that you eat the right foods to get the 6 essential nutrients. Another disorder is anorexia nervosa. It is characterized by morbid fear of gaining weight. The person is so slim, we call them size zeros. If you give them a push with your finger, they will topple and fall, causing a person to go on a very restrictive diet. The people are less than 85% of their normal body mass. Can you imagine? And they have a distorted self-image, seeing themselves as fat even when they clearly are not fat. Symptoms include severe weight loss, low blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, constipation. As the disorder progresses, the body shuts down, the skin dries out, and the digestive system stops working, and death may occur. In this case, you need psychological therapy and hospitalization of that individual. The next one we are looking at is bulimia. Bulimia nervosa. That is also characterized by binge eating followed by purging, usually done by vomiting or taking laxatives after eating. So the food does not have time to stay in the digestive tract may be associated with both obesity and anorexia. People are overly concerned about their body shape and their body mass, so they go on diet. Eventually, they lose control and binge on forbidden foods. Blood composition is changed, damaging the heart and the kidneys, possibly leading to death. Vomiting damages the esophagus, the pharynx, and the acid decays the teeth from behind. Psychological therapy and medication can be used to return the person to a more healthy body. I hope you have learned something, but we are just going to look at some of the definitions like propulsion, like deglutition, and so on and so forth. Okay, so ingestion is the process of bringing food into the digestive system, and the usual entry is the mouth. The usual entry is the mouth. Propulsion is the movement of food through the alimentary canal, and it involves the swallowing and peristalsis. Peristalsis is the movement of food through the remainder of the alimentary canal by a series of alternate waves of muscle contraction and relaxation. And chemical digestion, as we said earlier, is the breakdown of large molecules of food into their basic chemical building blocks, which are small enough to be absorbed. And it is largely performed by enzymes in the stomach and in the small intestines. Absorption is the transport of digested food materials from the cavity or the lumen of the alimentary canal to the blood or to the lymph. And it is primarily performed in the small intestines. Defecation is the elimination of indigestible material from the body in the form of feces, and it is performed by the large intestines. Now, the alimentary canal or the gastrointestinal tract digests and absorbs food. Alimentary canal, you have the mouth, the pharynx, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestines, and then the large intestines. The accessory digestive organs, the teeth, the tongue, the gallbladder, the liver, the pancreas, and the salivary glands. We have looked at this diagram in the past. And digestion is the disassembling line. Nutrients become more available at each stage. So you are advised to eat a more complex diet so that it takes time to release the nutrient as it goes down the digestive tract. So the 6 essential activities. We are looking at ingestion, propulsion, chemical digestion, mechanical digestion, absorption, and defecation. Ingestion, we have talked about it as taking in food and the usual point of entry as the mouth. Propulsion is swallowing and peristalsis. Peristalsis is a wave of contractions and relaxation of muscles in the organ walls. And mechanical digestion is chewing, mixing, and churning of food. The external environment for the digestive process. We are looking at the osmolarities, the presence of substances in the lumen, extrinsic control and intrinsic control. The extrinsic control is coming from the central nervous system, and the intrinsic control is coming from the local centers like the stomach, the intestines, the liver, and so on and so forth. Now, the extrinsic, we are talking about the reflexes that involve the autonomic nervous system. The intrinsic, you are talking about the enteric. Entero means the intestines, and the nerves that are found in the GI tract. So the peritoneum has got the serous membrane or the serosa, the visceral, the parietal. Okay, so this is the diagram where the abdomen is cut transversely. So you can see the organs there. That is the liver, that is the ventral mesentery, that is the peritoneal cavity, the visceral peritoneum, and the parietal peritoneum. So the mesentery is a double layer peritoneum that provides vascular and nerve supplies to the viscera, a means to hold the digestive organs in place and store fat. Retroperitoneal organs, we are looking at the kidneys, but it's not really part of this lecture, but the kidney is retroperitoneal. And the peritoneal organs, we are looking at organs that are surrounded by the peritoneum. We have looked at the mucosa, which is the innermost layer of the GI tract. We have looked at its nature. It produces mucus, it produces the gastric juices, it has muscle layer, it has nerves, it has blood vessels supplying the organ, and it can cause the stomach to move and churn so that the food in the stomach is mixed by mechanical digestion. The major functions are the protection from invading microorganisms, absorption of digested food materials, and secretion of mucus and digestive enzymes. The submucosa, we have the next layer after the mucosa, and it's composed of loose connective tissue, rich blood vessels, nerves, lymphatic vessels, and so on. The muscle layer, we call it the muscularis, and that is a region of smooth muscle that externally encircles the submucosa layer. And in most of the organs, it contains two layers of fibers, an inner circular layer and an outer longitudinal layer. At several points along the alimentary canal, the circular layer is thickened to form a sphincter, which acts as a muscular valve. So the muscularis provide the mixing of food during mechanical digestion, as well as propulsion of food through the alimentary canal by peristalsis. The serosa is known as the visceral peritoneum. All right, they are the definitions I wanted us to quickly go through. So thank you very much, and